Hi, my name is Kirsten and I work at the Marine Mills Folk School, and we are here talking with Cathy Wegener in her garden, if you will. And like always, we're starting out by showing you that even though it may look like we're sitting really close together, we're actually 6 feet apart. So Cathy is going to share with us how she started gardening and how she learned, and I'm just super impressed with what she can do with a few seeds. So, Cathy, welcome to our conversation. We could have it a garden chat.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Marine Mills. I'm really excited to share with you guys. By no means am I an expert at gardening, but I'm honored that you chose me to be part of your talk. So this is awesome. I'm excited.
Cool.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you started getting involved with gardening. I mean, did you grow up in a family of gardeners?
No, I didn't grow up in a family of gardeners. I grew up with anti-gardeners. And I was telling Kirsten earlier that my goal was to have something that my kids and I could fight about. So I started a garden, not really, but we certainly had enough arguments over it. I started gardening from a friend who kind of gave me the idea, and I got very tired of having food that I didn't know the ingredients of. So I wanted to grow things that I knew were good for the kids and good for us. And so I started a garden, and we had one in Tennessee where things never stop growing.
Right.
Where you start planting in February and you are really sick of your garden by November. So when I moved up here, it was great because I could have a big garden and there was an end to it. So
there was a start, a middle, and an end.
Right, exactly.
So how old were your kids when you started gardening? When even in Tennessee?
So I think in Tennessee the kids were probably about 4 and 6. Twins were probably 4. This was probably 6. So
okay.
We just morphed it up once we moved up here.
So how did you figure it out?
So I had friends that were gardeners. I did a lot of reading about gardening, and I made so many mistakes and continue to make mistakes. That's part of gardening too, is you learn as you go. You plant something, it doesn't work. So I learned as I went.
Okay. And so did you have a big garden when you started, or did you have a little garden when you started, or did you have big aspirations of a huge garden and then brought it back down?
I started pretty big and just I got to this size and stopped. So yeah.
You just figured it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So tell me about the process. Tell me about your process.
So the first thing I did, and again, this is me. It may not be the way someone else chooses. Always get a soil sample from the U of M. Every single year, get a soil sample from the U of M.
It would never occur to me to do that.
Yep, it's great. It's easy. They tell you what you need. Do you need nitrogen? Do you need potassium? What do you need in your garden? And generally, they'll lay out how you get that. How do you get nitrogen in your garden? What should you do? So that's the first step.
You do that every year?
Every year, because it changes every year. It changes based on what you've planted, and anyway, it changes every year. So I start that way every year, and then add that into my soil, till up the garden, and that's where you start. And actually, if I can backtrack a little bit, you start in January planting. Because your seed catalogs all come in January. All the great seed catalogs come in January.
Do you have a favorite?
And you get to dream. I have ordered from a lot of different places.
Okay.
So some of my items, I'm going to get up. And
you can get up and you can do whatever you need to do.
I have some I've ordered from Burpee. Is a great seed catalog. And they're not very expensive.
Yeah.
So Burpee always gets some of my business. Sometimes it's you can get heirlooms.
Yeah.
You can get organic from Burpee as well if you choose to. High Mowing is a good source. I've been getting some seeds from them. This is non-GMO stuff. And then Seed Savers, a lot of people have heard about Seed Savers. So Seed Savers was my second year I used them and had pretty good results this year. So you start in January, and then you get to work towards, or I do, a garden journal. And you can see how fancy my garden journal is.
I have to tell you that when I heard you had a garden journal, I thought, Wow, I would never think of that.
Oh,
So tell me about the
that's
journaling
exciting.
process.
So I write what I buy, first
Okay.
of all, where I
Okay.
get it from, because I may lose a seed packet here or there, it gets blown into the wind or whatever.
Yeah.
So I write that, and then I do a little
You draw it out.
draw out where I'm planting things, and you'll see a lot of mistakes because the pumpkins went crazy that year and they took over your beets or whatever. So I draw out what I'm going to do. So when I go to my garden, I know pretty much where I want to plant things. And then I do garden notes. And I'll say if it grew well, if it didn't, to change it, to order less, order more.
I am so
for next
impressed
year.
with you.
So,
So
no.
now tell me this. Do you go back and refer to it then?
Yep. So then I'll go back, especially when something comes up and you think, I wonder what that is. Is that a weed or is that something I planted on purpose? So, yes. So the garden journal comes in handy so you know what's in that spot. So
Okay.
I do a garden journal. And then I start planting around March. I'll start planting my indoor thing. So then I have the seeds and they come and it's a very exciting time. I decide what needs to be planted indoors and what is going to go right into the garden. Generally, your squash can be planted indoors. For sure, your tomatoes, your peppers, anything that needs a really long growing season. You can put those in a windowsill. I have a grow lab thing set up, but you can, because I have 150 tomato plants, but not everybody has that level.
150 tomato plants?
Some people want just 3 tomato plants, so they put it into a windowsill.
Exactly.
Some aren't as crazy about tomatoes as I am. So we plant indoors, and then once the weather gets warm, you have to bring the plants outside, let them start to get hardy, bring them back inside, and then when your soil is nice and warm, you can put it outside. So that's kind of the grow process. Mm-hmm. One of the things I've used this year, this is my very first year, and I'm very excited about this, is I've used these 2 books, and the library has these 2. Marine Mills Folk School had a class set up for companion planting, which really fired me up about that. Unfortunately, of course, with the world being what it was, we didn't have that class. Did not go, but it didn't stop the fire of wanting to do this. So I've done the vegetables, the flowers. You can see I marked that thing up, and companion plants.
So has companion planting, have you seen a difference? I mean, even if this is your first or second year doing it, have you seen a difference by companion planting? Putting plants with plants that they like each other, so they do better?
My garden is great this year. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was the water. Maybe it was there's a lot of variables in a garden.
Yeah. So I can see why a journal would be really, really helpful.
Right. Sure.
So you go out, you plant everything.
Yep.
And then what?
You weed and 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 you weed. So I put a podcast on, or I set the timer on my phone. I put an end of when I will stop weeding so that I'm not so exhausted, but you weed until you can get plants up. And then is the fun part.
So one of the things you told me prior to us starting to film is that this is a working garden. There are some gardens that are gorgeous, and then there are those that you're after a result.
Right.
Tell me about that.
So my garden is a working garden. I think it's beautiful anyway, but everything that's planted in my garden is planted deliberately. So it is either helping another plant, or it's attracting a bird that will eat tomato bugs, or a bird that will eat aphids. It will attract the right things in my garden, including snakes. I have snakes in my garden as well. The only thing that's not working is my gladiolas, which you'll see are in my front row kind of behind us. It's kind of hard to see over the weeds. Those were planted in honor of my mom. It was her favorite flower. So every year I put a row of glads in honor of her. But the rest of it is all working. If it's not working, it doesn't belong in my garden. And if it's a flower, it gets trimmed down and pulled in the house, trimmed down, pulled in the house, so I keep getting blossoms.
And I would say that the glads are working because they're touching your heart.
Right.
That's their job.
Right.
And so I would say that they're doing their job as
Sure.
well. So do you try new stuff?
Every year I try something new.
How do you pick out what you're going to do?
Usually what's pretty in the catalog.
Okay.
So,
I have just been talking with people about the fact that they just go and look at a seed packet and go, oh, I think I'm going to try this. So that's pretty much its attraction from a picture?
sure. And if I have something that is, I think, going to take a lot of room, or I really don't know much about that, I have a little nursery area that I'll start it and then transplant it. So
That's
I have a little
fascinating.
nursery area that I can put things that I'm not super sure I'm going to be excited about, and then transplant them into the garden.
So, Cathy, can we go for a walk in your garden?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Come for
yay!
a walk.
Oh, yay!